So everyone, welcome to Happy February. Yes. And to House of SpeakEasy's literary cabaret, seriously entertaining. I am Lucas Whitman.
And I'm Amanda Foreman, and our theme tonight is Never Say Never. In all seriousness, thank you all for joining us tonight. We are a literary nonprofit devoted to connecting readers and communities across New York, here on stage, in New York City schools all across the metro area, in our book truck that has been delivering over 15,000 books to communities around the city over the last few months, and in all of our wonderful programs there. But tonight we have an amazing show for you. 4 great writers who are going to each tell you a story or share with you an idea around that theme of never say never. So without further ado, let's welcome to the stage our first speaker tonight. Our first speaker is a professor and writer at the City College of New York. Her name is Asale Angel Ajani, and she's also the author of 2 nonfiction books, the second one of which is A Country You Can Leave, which is out later this month, but which is available as you leave with our booksellers outside, as will all the other books written by our speakers tonight. So please do support the writers and buy books during intermission or at the end of the show. And in her own words, she's written, "My writing style is shaped by my experience being born into the world not as one person, but as 2. I'm an identical twin. However, despite the fact of my 2-ness, my sister and I were lumped together as one. At home and at school, we were known simply as the twins, seemingly indistinguishable from one another, and since we were not seen, I learned to observe, and later the observations became stories that contained fragments of myself that I can inhabit on the page." Here on her own tonight, please welcome Asale to the stage.
Hi, well that take up 10 minutes alone. So you know everything about me, and I'm going to take these off. So first I want to say thank you for being out on a Tuesday night, and also thanks for presumably being readers, which is very important, especially now. So my Never Say Never story is about, well, I'm calling it the Brad Pitt edition. So this story, which might also be part of Never Say Never, begins with a psychic, or a friend who thought that she was a psychic. And many years ago, she told me on the eve of the publication of my first book that is actually nonfiction, she said, "Asale, be prepared. I had a vision that you are going to have a meeting with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. Get ready." So for me, getting ready means, what am I going to wear, right? I thought for a second, okay, maybe this is improbable, but she is a psychic, and my book at the time was a story about women who were incarcerated in Europe, commingled with the story of my father and my family, who my father was also, like these women, incarcerated in the United States. The women in Europe were incarcerated for drug trafficking in and out of Europe. My father incarcerated for trafficking drugs in and out of the United States, along with my mother for a brief period of time. So I thought, okay, celebrities on a, rehabilitative humanitarian tour, they'll be interested in this story, why not? So I went out, bought the most expensive pair of shoes that to this day, it was, I think, beyond the price of my rent. And I did this sort of as an act of faith, because I knew, I'd already been told what the publishing industry thought of my story, this book that I had written about these incarcerated women and my family. So I'd been told in two ways. The first was that my agent at the time had the distressing bit of news for me that I was, in fact, her lowest earning client because she'd never sold a book for so little before. And the woman who bought my book also let me know how much she valued the story, because she told me that I couldn't protest, as I was, the title of my book nor the cover art, because she bought the story, she owned the story, and therefore she had, at her capacity and at her whim, a marketing department that knew exactly what what commerce and what readers wanted and needed. So at the time, those shoes were really an act of faith, right? I bought them because I was hoping that Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie would somehow redeem this story, allow me to make it mine again. So I put them very lovingly in an area in my apartment where every time I passed them, I would sort of pet them, breathe on them, smell them, just basically an incantation for, please, make the call, Brad, make the call. What I didn't know at the time was that when that call came, what the cost of shame would be. Because obviously I didn't get to wear the shoes, and the call didn't come. I'm no longer friends with that psychic. When I put the shoes away, I had a tremendous amount of shame because I felt like the market hadn't valued this story. That it was a story I'd been told. This is a story that we already know everything about. We know the stories of people who are incarcerated. We know the stories of people who've trafficked drugs. We know the story. And so I put the shoes away and vowed that I would never, ever, ever put my faith in the marketplace ever again, to get my self-worth, to get validation, to feel like I had been, or the stories that I was trying to tell, that they had been seen. So fast forward, I don't know what time it is. Oh good, I still have time. Fast forward many, many years, a few gray hairs, and a little bit of wisdom later, this past summer, I get a call on the eve, my book is not officially published yet, on the eve of my novel, A Country You Can Leave, my publicist tells me, Asele, guess what? I'm not going to say that this is going to happen, but a celebrity book club is really interested in your book. Not just interested, but film rights, TV rights, the whole thing. I'm thinking, ooh, all right. Try not to get too involved. Try to just let it go. But I did go to the back of my closet, pulled out those shoes, which had never been worn. Thank you, thank you. And put them in a, place at the front of the closet. I did not, breathe their smell and do all of that this time. But I was ready. I was ready. And here's the thing. The story of my novel, essentially, is a story of a community that I grew up in. And it's a multiracial community, a community of African American, Hispanic, Asian Pacific Islanders, indigenous, and white folks who individually get pathologized because we, and I still say we, despite all of my privileges, because we live at or near the poverty line. And individually, we get pathologized as drug war fugitives, wombs waiting to be filled with other charity cases. We are undocumented and migrant laborers. We are unwanted in this country, right? We don't belong. But collectively, what we are is the vast majority of people who have been failed by this state, right? Who have been forced to work at the service of politicians who cannot lead with dignity or humanity to see our humanity. So I was very excited, more than excited. I was thrilled that maybe a story like this would make it to a morning show with celebrities talking about it while people in America sipped their coffee and heard about the lives of people who work very, very hard despite what the likes of Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene and all of those people say about us. And so when I was told that they'd killed it, as it were, I knew this time that I wasn't going to put my faith again in the marketplace. What I decided this time was that I knew the truth. I knew the truth. I knew the value of the stories of people who were devalued in this country. And so I donated the shoes, never to be worn, which is sort of unfortunate because well, anyway, I do have a skirt in case I do meet Seth Meyers, if anybody wants to know. But I know the truth of the value of devalued people. And that's all that matters. And so I want to say that for all of you who know the truth of devalued people in this country, I hope someday we will get there together, make sure that people in politics also understand. And I also want to put in a little plug. So if any of you know Brad Pitt's people, tell them I have a very good psychic for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Saleh. Our next speaker tonight, Joshua David Stein, is the co-author of numerous cookbooks, including New York favorites like Il Buco and Nomoi cookbook. And he's the author of numerous children's cookbooks as well, including Cooking for Your Kids and Stranger Things, the official cookbook. I'm going to be getting that one for my kid after. And he's also the editor of the essay collection, To Me, He Was Just Dad, Growing Up with Famous Fathers, and he was also previously the editor-at-large at Fatherly. I think you're getting a bit of a trend here. He's a journalist who's contributed to Esquire, Men's Health, New York, Eater, Grub Street. I should also add on a personal note that when Joshua and I were young journalists, we went off on one of those boondoggles of test driving a new Bentley in the middle of a snowstorm in upstate New York. And though neither of us were responsible for it, at least 2 Bentleys ended up totaled during that test drive. So he has suffered for his craft. Please welcome Joshua David Stein to the stage.
Hey, everyone. Hi. Yes, I'm Joshua David Stein, destroyer of Bentleys. Yeah, I am a cookbook author, and I did the Nomoi Tea Parlor cookbook and the Il Buco cookbook and many other cookbooks and children's books, including the catalog of Hugs, which you can get out front. And when I thought of the theme, Never Say Never, I never say never generally. So I thought about what the opposite of that, or not the opposite, the inverse of that is sort of always say yes, which is also why I'm here, because I was just asked to do this like a couple of days ago, and I'm not very well rehearsed, but I always say yes, so here I am. So this story happened maybe maybe a month ago. Before I start, I should say, I I went to NYU. Asele was my professor for the Transnational Prison Industrial Complex. Wonderful professor. But the other thing that happened at NYU is that freshman year, I lived in Carlisle, which is up on Union Square, and I walked by, there used to be a Crunch on 13th Street, and I walked by the Crunch, and I saw this woman teaching a ballet boot camp class, and I'd never danced, but I thought she was ravishing, and I was like a 17-year-old, and I was like, okay, I'll do ballet. So things didn't really work out with Jessica, but I did get really into ballet, and I went to dance space, and I had a lower tier mediocre dance career, I would say. But when I graduated, I kind of had to decide, okay, do I want to try to make a living as a dancer, or do I want to try to make a living as a writer? Both were kind of tenuous, and I realized I was a less bad writer than I was a bad dancer, so I decided to write, which turns out I'm okay at. That is a prelude for the story. So, a month ago, my friend was in town, Zoe, she's an actress, and she was telling me that she got cast as the lead in a musical based on the band Pavement. Does anyone know Pavement? Yeah, okay. I was told no one would say anything, so I'm happy to hear some people like Pavement. So Pavement, for those of you who don't know, we're a mid-90s band founded in Stockton, California, and their signal philosophy was kind of like they don't give a fuck about anything. Like, they could have been famous. They had one song called Cut Your Hair, which was kind of like their mainstream hit, and then they decided they didn't want to do that. They just wanted to make their own music, and that was not commercially viable, which is why like one table here knows about them, which I'm very happy for. But they just did their own thing, and I think for me, as a young person, the idea that you can disregard external praise to only do what you want, to not only do what you want in a narcissistic way, but to follow your creative voice was like immensely inspiring. And it's something that kind of stuck with me and has stuck with me for my whole career. So, and I love the music. The music's really good. So Zoe got cast in this musical as a lead, and she said, they're looking for chorus members. And I was, what I do for a living is like I go and I eat at restaurants, and then I go home and then I write about what I ate, and I'm just sitting and I'm not doing anything active, and like that's my life. And here was this chance, to be on in an off-Broadway show as a chorus member for my favorite band. And I thought that, well, if I don't at least try to do it, I will regret it for the rest of my life. So I reached out to the producer and I said, I'd really love to come audition for this musical. He said, sure. Like, he gave me the time. He said, bring a headshot and a resume and memorize this song, because there's an a cappella part of the audition. And then there's also like a dance audition as well. And I said, okay, I can do that. The night before, I started getting a lot of jitters, I guess. And I thought, like I said, I'm a restaurant critic, I'm a children's book author. Like, the most annoying thing that can happen as a children's book author is someone comes up to you and they're like, oh, I could write children's books. Or like, hey, I have an idea. What about this for a children's book? And you're like, no, it's actually like work. You can't just, it looks easy and then you want to do it. It's like, that's insulting a little bit. I mean, sometimes the ideas are really good, but generally, they're not. And I didn't want to be that dude in this audition where there's like actual dancers and actual singers, and it's like, hey, I'm like a middle-aged dude from Borough Park and I want to be on Broadway, off-Broadway, anywhere near Broadway. Lafayette. So I did what like anyone does when they're feeling anxious, they doom scroll, and I was doom scrolling Instagram and then YouTube because I was really in it. And I saw this this YouTube short of David Bowie giving life advice. And his life advice was, if you feel safe, then you are not where you need to be with your work. You want to be a little bit farther in the deep end than you can stand, and you're like on your tiptoes with your head trying to stay above water. That's where you know you're in the right place. And I thought, okay, well, if I don't want to do it because I don't want to be disrespectful, that's one thing. But if I don't want to do it because I'm scared, I should do it. And I realized one of the reasons I'm scared is because I think we all are mostly known. It's not like we're famous, but we're known by the people who know us, and like they know what we do. And I'm a restaurant critic, and I walk into a restaurant, and everyone's like kissing up to me because I'm the critic, and I've done all this stuff, and I'm a known quantity. And I'm about to enter into a room where no one knows me. Not only does no one know me, but it's not like I'm a secret Nijinsky and I'm gonna blow their socks off. I'm also like not that good. But I'm okay being a fool. I think I'm okay being a fool. I'm good at being a fool. So the day comes, and I go to this Midtown rehearsal space. It's like the most stereotypical like Broadway experience. It's like in Midtown West. It's on the 4th floor. There's this rickety elevator. It says Slanted Enchanted Musical. That's the name of the musical. It's also the name of one of their albums, Slanted and Enchanted. Yeah, that table. You guys are like Steve Malkmus acolytes. I love it. I go upstairs. The elevator doors open, and it is like out of Fame. You know, there are these dancers lining the hallway, young, like 20s, preteens. No, they were like teens, but to me they looked really young. And, wearing leg warmers and spandex, and their legs were everywhere, and they were so serious, and they were all like grasping their their glossy headshots and their resumes. And I don't have a headshot. I mean, I have a headshot. Well, it was up there. But I don't have like a nice color printer, so like I can't print it off. And I have a resume, and it just says like editor, writer. It's like not germane for the task at hand. But I'm gonna do it. So I go in, and there's 12 of us in this wave of auditions, and I'm also wearing like this. I did not wear spandex. I didn't wear spandex, or my fabric had no stretch. And there's a choreographer, this woman Angela, and she's like, "Okay, we're gonna run you through like a couple of some choreography. It's gonna be really fast, and it's really hard, and you don't have to pick it all up, but we just want to see how you move." I was like, "Oh man, oh man." There were like parts of this choreography where you had to like pretend to be Charlie Chaplin, which you had to improv as Charlie Chaplin, which is outside of my comfort zone. But this is what I thought. I thought Steve Malkmus, lead singer of, that's right, Pavement, lead singer of Pavement. His whole thing was that he didn't care. He was just gonna do what he wanted to do. He was kind of like he was like a slacker in a way, very successful, but a slacker. And I thought, okay, well, I truly understand Pavement. And that is going to be my ace in the hole, is that like I alone among these 20-year-olds who have never heard of Pavement understand that Pavement's entire philosophy is not caring. So I'm going to not care in this audition, and somehow the producer will be like, "Oh, that guy. Like, he gets it." So we start doing the choreography, and I'm not terrible. I'm not the best. There's this guy with like a ponytail and like flowy pants. He was the best. But I was like, okay, I could do a barrel roll. Do you guys know what that is? A barrel roll? It's like you jump and I did that. We had to do the choreography in one group of 12 to learn it, then smaller groups of 4. And I felt like I had the musical phrasing and the timing right, because I've heard these songs since I was like 19. And then I left the dance portion feeling like, okay, I can do this. Like, it's like, how does actors equity work? And like, are there other auditions I can go on? And like, am I going to be in the touring version of this or like the like I had all of these questions, like what my rider was going to look like, would I have like my own dressing room? And then we had to sit and then we had to come back in and do the a cappella version of a song called Gold Sounds. And my trick there was that like I had learned the third verse. And I was sure like everyone had learned the first verse, but I was gonna do like the deep cut of the third verse. It's also the only one that makes any sense. So I went in and I sang my heart out, but I sing like a guy sings Pavement in the Shower, which is like not singing for Broadway. But at the end of it, the assistant casting director was like, "Oh, you have a dance background, don't you?" And I was like, "Yeah," when I was a young man, which is like such a weird thing to say when you're auditioning for a job. And then she said, "Do you tap?" And I was put on the spot, and I was like, "No, I do jujitsu," which is true, but like doesn't. Not part of it. There's no jujitsu in the musical. But I still thought, and if Stephen Malkmus, lead singer of, yeah, that's right. I'm gonna make you all Pavement fans by the end. If Steve Malkmus was there, I was sure that he would be like, "Oh, yeah, he gets the philosophy of this band." So I left feeling like any day I was going to make my off-Broadway debut. And I went home. You know, there was a part where I was supposed to look at the sound person and be like, and this is what the choreography looked like, and I was going to do it, but I might do that at the end. But, yeah, actually, I'll do it now. Yeah, let's do it now. So these are the first, 12 counts or something of our audition. Thank you. I did not get the call back. But as it comes to never saying never and its converse, always say yes, I feel so grateful for that experience. And the reason I feel so grateful for it is that it's so easy, I feel like, for me at least, to be defined by what you've done. And say, okay, I'm a writer, I'm a dad, fatherly, I crash Bentleys, I suffer for my craft. But just even the possibility that I could maybe be a Broadway dancer, off-Broadway dancer. Even that possibility of redefinition, of looking at an identity or a life that's going by and thinking, yes, that could also be my life, has been so inspiring since that. I'm out of breath from doing that. Imagine doing that for like an hour. I would never have lasted. Whew. So I guess I'll just leave you guys with a lyric from Pavement from one of my favorite songs called Old to Begin. And the lyric is, embrace the senile genius. Watch him reinvent the wheel. I don't need your summary acts to give into the narrative age. Old to begin. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. That was a double first for Speakeasy. The first time anyone's danced on stage, and the first time anyone's played Pavement up here. So, And Joshua, you have now danced on an off Broadway stage. Let's just be, you know? And now that Joshua's had his chance to perform, now it's all of your chances to perform a little bit with our quiz. So you're going to have on your table, there's an answer sheet, and we're going to have someone come out here and read out 3 passages, and you all have to guess the authors of that passage and the name of the work. And it could be a poem, song, novel. You get this. And the winner of the quiz will go home with this beautiful book bag. Not Amanda Foreman, the beautiful book bag. And so good luck, everyone. And for tonight, for our quiz host, we're very pleased to welcome Samira Asma Sadek to the stage. She's a Bangladeshi journalist, poet, educator who's appeared on the HBO series Takeout with Lisa Ling, and her journalism has appeared in the New York Times, The Guardian, The Washington Post. And perhaps almost as important is that she's participated in our school programs, helping students find their voice in workshops. And we're going to show you a little video before she reads the quotes, a little video of her with writers at with students at the Fordham High School for the Arts from November. So please stay tuned, and then it'll be your chance to take the quiz. Thank you all so much.
There's something really powerful about talking about your path as an artist with young people. Just to gather so many high schoolers in the space that are interested in writing, that are interested in art making, it felt like a very easy way to introduce young people to artists and a comfortable way for the artists to engage with students.
The House of SpeakEasy, I think, is really important. It's a way of exposing kids to literature and ideas and folks who are engaging with ideas directly. It's one thing to see a YouTube video of somebody speaking, but to actually have an interaction with them is really important.
The space that was created in the classrooms by House of SpeakEasy in terms of bridging a form of access to the students to creative writing, to performance art. I don't remember that being in my high school. It's not necessarily a built-in part of the school system here. And the fact that House of SpeakEasy can bring that extension is incredible.
Just getting the opportunity to be with professional or successful people and hearing really intimate things about them were very, very inspiring. And being able to ask questions on a personal level and in smaller groups was incredible.
It's always fun to hear from people who actually have stories to tell, especially if something really connects to you, which I thought it did today. I would love to hear more from House of SpeakEasy.
Can you hear me? This is me every time I walk into the stage. It's fun. This is how I introduce myself. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good evening. It's so wonderful to be here. And before I start, can we just give another round of snaps or applause for Asali and Jonathan and Joshua? Oh, my God. I also want to say the Nomwa t-shirt. I think every New Yorker here, we just internally, we are all wearing a Nomwa t-shirt and walking around. It definitely is me, so thank you so much. I saw that and was like, yes, that's me. Okay, so I'm gonna read out the quotes. Remember, one of them may be a song. I decided not to sing it because I don't think anyone here deserves to go through that, so I'm just gonna read it. Quote 1. You are wise and powerful. Will you not take the ring? No, cried Gandalf, springing to his feet. With that power, I should have power too great and terrible. And over me, the ring would gain a power still greater and more deadly. His eyes flashed and his face was lit as by a fire within. Do not tempt me, for I do not wish to become like the Dark Lord himself. Yet the way of the ring to my heart is by pity. Pity for weakness and the desire of strength to do good. Do not tempt me, I dare not take it, not even to keep it safe, unused. The wish to wield it would be too great for my strength. I shall have such need of it. Great perils lie before me. Okay, quote 2. Mother, mother, there's too many of you crying. Brother, 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 there's far too many of you dying. You know we've got to find a way to bring some love in here today. Yeah, father, father, we don't need to escalate. You see, war is not the answer, for only love can conquer hate. You know we've got to find a way to bring some loving here today. You know, did someone say you need? I didn't say that's a song. I don't know if that's the song. Quote 3. Generally, by the time you're real, most of your hair has been loved off, and your eyes drop out, and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you're real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand. Thank you so much, and good luck.
everyone. Okay. Okay, first things first. The competition that you've all been participating in just now, the prize has got even more exciting. Because not only does it include a free trip to Niagara Falls, with the luggage included, it also includes signed books in the tote bag, which is much more important. Yes, the books are signed. And if you haven't already given in your thing, give it in now and we'll collect it. Okay, now, our next speaker. Our next speaker tonight is a very dear friend. She just told me amazing news, which I did not know, which is that, okay, I'm going to get this right. So she is a writer and an educator and an organizer, and she was recently named one of Kennedy Center's Next 50. I know. And she is Lincoln Center's inaugural poet in residence. I know. So, on top of that, because she's a very busy lady, she's the executive director of Just Media, a media literacy initiative designed to support the groundwork of criminal justice leaders and community members. She's a founder of the diverse literature initiative Woke Baby Book Fair. She's the artistic director of Urban Word NYC and the author, I know, it gets better and better, and the author of a number of books, including Chrome Valley Poems, which is coming out today. And exactly. So, I am talking about, obviously, the incomparable Mahogany Brown. I know, we have some Mahogany fans in the audience. Woo-woo! So, this is Mahogany in her own words. I am inspired by both of my grandmother's dreams. I am inspired by young people. I have the opportunity to work with and learn from them, and I am inspired by my daughter and her ability to find the most terrifying things beautiful. Mahogany Brown, we're inspired by you. Woo!
I love how I started just coming outside. I was like, oh, I just want to see what's going on. Hi, everyone. Okay. Shout out to you for knowing that this is not YouTube, but real life, so you can speak back to me. I can hear you. Also, shout out to SpeakEasy, House of SpeakEasy, for hosting me on the night that my book was born. So. But wait, it's a burst. It's a book purse. Because I hate when my books get messed up in my bag. So I made a book purse that can fit all books. So I literally checked. Every book that's outside can fit in this one bag. You're welcome. Never say never. I am not going to dance, Joshua. Can't keep up. And I'm not as funny as Sister Sally. I'm sorry. I have a dirty mouth, so my funny is different. But when I think of never say never, I think of how I came to New York City in the first place. Because I thought, as someone who was born and raised in Oakland, California, that I was never moving to Brooklyn. New York. Never. Refuse it. And 23 years later, after my summer residency ended, I'm still here. So that's the first lie. Never say never did not work for me. I am forever a citizen of New York City. And it just became one of those things for me where I was like, oh, so the never say never is like the year of yes with Oprah. It is. It's just you just walk into the fear, as Audre Lorde said, and so I do. And the story I think I want to share with you is how Chrome Valley even came to be. Anybody have debt from college? Shout out to you. Anybody paid off their debt from college? Shout out to you. Anybody get scholarships for college? Shout out to you. Anybody going back to college, lifelong student? Shout out to you too. So, Chrome Valley began as my dissertation in an MFA program. And I was told that I would never, or in that moment when I reached out to an editor, I didn't have a voice because I didn't have a real audience member that they knew by face. And I said, well, look at my face. I buy books. And they said, yeah, but no. And so I just thought, okay, this is gonna be, if I wanna be a poet in New York City, this is gonna be my life. And before I gave up on writing, before I gave up on publishing, before I gave up on performing, I called my partner and I told him what the editor said. And the first thing he said was, okay, they don't want to publish you. That's fine. People don't have to publish you. You can publish yourself. It's like, no, I can't do that. No one takes it seriously. And he said, or they do, because look at Jessica Care Moore. Look at Haki Matabuti. Look at Sister Sonia Sanchez. Look at Nikki Giovanni. Look at Audre Lorde. Like, these people put out pamphlets at a point in time because their work, someone said no to their work, and their work was that important to them. So you can do it too. And I said, well, you don't listen to me enough. Gotta call somebody else. So I did. And then they said what he said, and I said, you're also not listening. Not talking to you either. And so that's when I signed up for this MFA program, right? Within 10 years of the no thank you, not you, not that voice, not that story. All the while, I'm hosting the New Eurekan Poets Cafe, which is the longest running poetry venue in the country. Thank you. All the while, I'm teaching in schools, New York City schools. Them joints are scary, right? And they're not scary because of the kids. Let's be clear. They're scary because of the building. You walk in, you're like, am I supposed to be? Do you want me to teach here? What's happening? So all this is, all the no's were coming, and the whole time I had an audience of hundreds, of thousands. And so I'd like to read the poem where I thought I would never have the opportunity to read this piece, because even after that editor said no, I kept pushing. And then 10 more editors said no. And then I had a beautiful writing retreat, because there are still people that are saying yes, right? You get caught up in the no's instead of looking at who's saying yes. And sometimes the no is just not now. It's in a minute. Focus. So I kept publishing myself. And I went to these residencies and I went to these writing retreats. And I have the real blessing of calling these amazing writers my friends and comrades and teachers. So after residency at Poets House, and Ocean Vuong was my fellow, after a residency at Cave Canem, and Anastasia Renee is my fellow, and Terrence Hayes is my fellow, and Nicole Seeley is my fellow. I took the book back. I took the no back. And I edited the shit out of this. And it got into a slight bidding war, right? Never say what? Never say never. And after 3 long, scary days, I got a 2-book deal with Live Right Norton, and this book is now in the world. Word. Thank you. And so I feel really bad because, like I said, I don't have a dance. I don't have a funny moment. I just have these really nice shoes that match the undercurrent. You didn't see it coming, huh? You didn't see it. Oh, that could be a dance. That could happen, okay. That's all I got. That's all I got. And I got my me, which is enough, right? which is enough. We are enough. So House of SpeakEasy, thank you for allowing me to share the reason that I walked into every no, every single no, every single door that closed. They just reminded me that if the door closes, there's a window, and if the window closes, get a rock. And I like to leave you with this poem. Chrome Haunt. They stole the car. You got ready. You turn into your father so quick. The cul-de-sac calls you out your name when you sleep. You wake with a seance crusted in your eyes. They all know when you got a wrong decision to make. Word get along like wind. That's how the block knows everything. Yeah, that's how Stratford knows. Yeah, that's how Poplar knows. Street names colored in tree sap sermon. Maybe that's why the sun's so hot, or why the water's so ice. That's why the drug boys whistle. That's why you sleep late. That's why you skip breakfast. That's why your knees jerk and brush against the gat silent in your lap. Your fingers slide against the life drainer. Then your fingers don't move at all. You begin to rap your knuckles against the door. The screen just a singing like an old friend. Black, black marbles peek out. They ain't here. They ain't got it. They gone. You almost smile. They can't see your hands, but they know you real. Your gapped haunt opening. And now they scared. Whew. They scared to hear you laugh. So laugh at the no, y'all. You made it.
One more time, let's give it up for Mahogany Brown. Woo, woo, woo! So our final speaker of the night is my friend, our friend, Zachary Karabell, who is one of the most prolific writers that I know today. So first of all, he is the founder of the Progress Network at New America, and also, as a side gig, he is president of River Twice Capital. He's also a regular columnist for Time. He is a contributing editor for Politico and the host of the Progress Network podcast, What Could Go Right. He's also the author of 13 books, including, most recently, my favorite, Inside Money, Brown Brothers Harriman and the American Way of Power. But here's the weird thing about Zach. Although he's amazingly prolific and he has words coming out of his ears, he refused to provide a quote of his own writing for tonight. So instead, we had to ask John Meacham to tell us something about Zach. And this is what John Meacham wrote for us. He said, well, and this is about Inside Money, with judicious insight and a flair for storytelling, Zachary Karabell has made an immense contribution to understanding.
So in the immense territory that is my own self-involvement, I neglected to notice that the theme of the evening was never say never, and prepared something that had nothing to do with none of that. So having had years of pseudo-experience on live television, 5 years doing CNBC and a couple of years on Fox Business News playing the liberal, I have learned, as have politicians, to answer the question that you want to answer and not the question that you were asked, and also to string together a series of random ideas and make them seem like a coherent narrative. So I will, in the spirit of Never Say Never, say that the theme of this, which, by the way, I also didn't realize that I was supposed to tell a story, and instead have come up with something resembling a tone poem or a 12-minute cultural haiku, that we are going to use this as never say that capitalism cannot change. Never say that capitalism is simply the massive, unequal inequity of transferring the wealth and the work of many to the benefit of the few, and that is not necessarily the system that we are doomed to live in, nor is the system that we have been in the past, even though it appears to be all totalizing and all true in the moment. So I'm going to attempt to weave together a little bit of what I wrote about in my book, Inside Money, and a little bit of the life I lived growing up going to private schools in New York City, or in this case, private school in New York City. So in 1884, Endicott Peabody, who was a young schoolmaster and had looked to England as a source of inspiration, thought, you know, the United States needs a good school that will train the young men, and yes, they were all men, and they were all white, and they were mostly Protestant, and they were all Christian. We need to train them to be the leaders of tomorrow. And he opened the Groton School in Connecticut in 1884 and emblazoned on the school walls and above what I imagine to be the gates. I have no idea if it was on the gates, but in my imagination it was. He inscribed the Latin phrase, qui servare et regnare. I never studied Latin, but it sounds like I did. And that phrase meant to serve is to rule. And the idea was that if you could train the young men who were going to be the leaders of the next generation and inculcate them with some belief about the connective tissue between their privilege and the collective prosperity, you would create a society that was balanced and would thrive, because everybody from the lowest rungs to the highest rungs would enjoy some degree of collective prosperity. Peabody was a strange dude, and he also didn't really believe in curriculum. He believed in inculcating these values. He once said, and I'm going to quote from this because I couldn't remember it, "I'm not sure I like boys who think too much. A lot of people think a lot of things we could do without." And so he thought sports were a more appropriate formation of people's character, as well as a lot of dogmatic rote education. It's clearly true that a lot of people think too much. And that belief led to the training of a whole series of generations of American elites, including the Roosevelts, and in the case of this book that I wrote, children of the Brown family. The Brown family started Brown Brothers Harriman, which is the oldest privately held investment bank in the United States, and in many ways is one of the wheels of commerce and one of the wheels of capital that have allowed for the American system to thrive. And at one point in the mid-20th century, 3 of the partners of Brown Brothers included a Secretary of Defense, an Undersecretary of State, and Prescott Bush, which is where the Bush family fortune comes from. He was, of course, the paterfamilias, another Latin phrase that I don't speak Latin, for 2 presidents, George W. Bush and George H.W. Bush. The Browns went to the school, and they too, based on their family and based on this training, really were hammered home this idea that there is no individual thriving. There's no individual wealth, there's no family wealth, there's no corporate wealth, unless the society in which we're all embedded also thrives. Call it the Spider-Man view of history, right? With great power comes great responsibilities. And they really wove this in their letters from generation to generation, father to son and father to son, in a kind of Polonius-like hectoring of their generational wealth, that this was something that was both a responsibility and a gift, that you had a responsibility to connect yourself to the larger society. And in 1925, in one of the ceremonial, around the 100th anniversary of one of the offices of Brown Brothers, the next generation leader at that time, James Brown, no, not that James Brown, a different James Brown, totally different color, totally different time, said at the ceremonial dinner in a way that I would love to paraphrase, but I couldn't do it justice except to read it. "I believe that a business, like an individual, has a soul, strong as the forces are, which can lead one to work for gain, for the comfort and happiness of one's family. There needs to be a stronger motive, a motive for unselfish service. Our company was started and perpetuated by God-fearing men who had the interest not only of their business, but of their community and country at heart." And that sort of suffused everything they did. Even though a lot of what they did was for both personal gain and class gain, they continually believed that there was some link of to serve is to reign. And that informed a white, exclusive, male WASP elite that in many ways was the apex of American society. And by the 1970s, that elite was beginning to fade, but was still in somewhat of its individual glory. Now, I went to a school in New York City in the 1970s and 1980s, which still exists today, called the Collegiate School for Boys, which in many ways was its own iteration, actually founded long before Groton, claims to be the oldest school in the United States, founded by the Dutch Collegiate Church. And in those years, it was in many ways what felt like, although it didn't feel like at the time because the metaphor I'm about to use came after, but it felt like retroactively exactly like Dead Poets Society without the sleepaway. And we would on times come and, of course, go to our weekly chapel where the headmaster would intone his homiletic words of wisdom to the boys in order to train them in what it was and the value system that he thought was most important. Now, apparently the collegiate motto was "In unity there is strength." I don't recall that motto ever being expressed at any point when I was at the school. There are a few things I do remember. I remember the Greek phys ed teacher who had retired to Greece and care of a Greek shipping fortune done by the Koulakundis family had allowed a bunch of 16-year-olds every year to go on something called Hellenic Studies, where we would spend 2 weeks imbibing the wisdom of the Greeks and the ancients. And he would meet us there, and the year he did, as he always did, lectured us very sternly about things that we did not know and must be prepared for. The one that somehow lodged in my mind was the statement of, "Boys, the sun in Greece is very, very hot. Hotter than you know. You must use lots of lotion and not lie on hot bitches." Now, I don't think that's exactly what he meant. And it was very hard for us as 16-year-olds to actually string together the lesson that he wanted us to learn versus the lesson that I think most of us have subsequently figured out. I also remember the headmaster of the school, who was a martinet who would tend to dress in lime green pants and plaid jackets, and for whom the word martinet is an understatement by several calculations. And he, at least once, but in my memory, multiple times, got up and said, "Boys, the school is like a well-oiled machine. Everyone in this machine is a part. There are some who are gears, there are some who are wheels, there are some who are engines, there are some who are," he probably didn't say lubricants, but now having told that story, that everybody has a part that they must play, and that if any part in that machine breaks, the entire machine ceases to function. And so whether you are a janitor cleaning the classrooms, or a teacher teaching, or a parent sending your children here, or a student, you each have your part that you must fulfill responsibly. And in the case of students, it was to learn, to be respectful to your teachers, to listen to your elders. That was a very hierarchical view of what it meant to be within a society, but it was also one that in its own highly diluted way was no different than what I just read from James Brown, saying that there is a connective tissue, that we are all in this society and have a place within it, and that if we detach from that, the whole system breaks down. By the late 1980s, the whole system of the idea that there were elites who would lead society and everyone else would also play their part, but that everyone had a responsibility to everyone else, had broken down. It had broken down because of Vietnam, it had broken down because of Watergate, it had broken down because of an efflorescence of individuality based on the me-ism of the 1970s, but it had also broken down because of a rejection of the narrow, exclusionary reality of a white male dominant elite, that as much as it preached the collective good, that collective good was highly constrained if you weren't born into it. The problem, of course, is that what it led to and what it created once you break down that structure, and it's impossible to imagine either someone like Brown today or someone like our headmaster giving those speeches, is that once you break down a framework that, however flawed, also led to some sense of our collective, you can be left with a sort of antinomian, anarchic, what's it all about anyway? And one of the ironies of something like Brown Brothers Harriman is that once it had been broken up in the 1930s by the Glass-Steagall Act, which happened in the wake of the Great Depression, of the many trees of it breaking up was a firm that was its offshoot called Drexel Burnham Lambert. And Drexel Burnham Lambert hired someone named Michael Milken. And Michael Milken in the 1980s became the icon not just of a certain type of capitalism that was entirely perceived as about individual and or corporate profit, with the consequences be damned. That whatever the consequences of that profit were simply wasn't the responsibility of the individual or of the corporation. And in many ways, the Gordon Gekko character in Oliver Stone's epic film Wall Street, who says with a totally straight face that greed is good and tries to create a narrative of how greed is good, becomes the icon of a particular era of capitalism that we are living in one form or another to this day. And that's what happens when you lose the connective tissue of what it means to profit individually and what it means to prosper collectively. I think, though, that we are, once again, back to the never say never, at a moment where a notion of capitalism as a connective reality is beginning to reemerge as a reality that many people are embracing, whether it's the largest asset manager in the world in the form of BlackRock and its CEO talking about corporations without purpose are without purpose, meaning they serve no social purpose and they end up having a highly destructive collective purpose. Or whether it's the Business Roundtable saying that unless a company and a corporation and individuals of means recognize their responsibility to the collective and that every collective exists not just for some abstract notion of profitability, but for the notion that we are all in this together, that is becoming a patois that is not quite as alien and is much more familiar. Now, all these things, it all depends. And if you're going to make predictions, especially about the future, we never really know how this is all going to unfold. But I do find that these themes, in a much more inclusive fashion, in a way that is no longer nearly as elite and no longer is nearly about a few people prospering while the rest do not, that the idea that we are in a collective, somewhat created by and enhanced by these notions of what it means to be, and somewhat being brought to bear by a new generation and a new set of sensibilities, I think in many ways we are going back to what we were, but in a way that is far more inclusive. You can't go back, there is no going back, and I certainly wouldn't want to go back to a time either to my 1970s and 80s school or to a world where only a small group of WASP elites controlled everything. But I do think that this idea that we live in a collective and that all of us bear responsibility not just to our own selves and our own families and our own institutions, but to all of us, is a world that I think we are beginning to live in once again in a way that we somewhat lived in before and hopefully will continue to live in the future. So thank you.
Gosh, well, I feel so enlightened. One more time for Zach Caramel. Woo! All right, so we have these answers here. But before we get to the answers, on your tables, Lucas, there are these postcards. Can you see them all? Yes, the arrows. So it's very exciting because they are the postcards for our upcoming gala on April the 13th. It is Play It Forward. And please join us. It's going to be an evening of fun, games, quizzes, competitions, just like this, only even better. And as you know, all the funds go to our schools programs and the bookmobile and all our community initiatives. So I hope to see you there. Now, onwards. Lucas, will you do me the honor? And I have to say, we're really proud of you all because none of you cheated. And we know you didn't cheat because none of you got it exactly right. But well done, A for effort. And
Wait, do you want the answers first or the winner first?
Oh,
the answer.
my God, the answers first. Okay, fine. Okay.
I just want to know what they didn't get right.
Okay, so number one, Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. Woo! Okay.
Actually, the Fellowship of the Ring.
Oh. Okay, the Fellowship of the Ring, but I know it is the Lord of the Rings. I'm just saying. Okay. Number two, What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. Okay. And finally, this is the one that kind of tripped you all up and shows how honest you all are. Yes, but who was it by? Yeah, exactly. Marjorie Williams. So, The Velveteen Rabbit. Okay. Okay, Lucas. Okay, you better read it. Okay.
And the winner is Amanda, not this Amanda, a different Amanda, no last name. Amanda in the front here. Congratulations, Amanda. Woo! We'll meet you outside with your signed books. Congratulations. Well done.
Okay. So our next show on March the 7th is featuring Marie Brenner and John McWhorter, among others. So we both hope to see you here. And once again, congratulations and thank you to our amazing writers this evening. Let's all give them one more round of applause.
And after the show, all of the writers will be outside signing books. I encourage you all to buy their books, support them. Thank you all for coming out tonight.
Thank you.